Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into two stories that are going to make you think twice about personal responsibility, the justice system, and that strange pull of internet fame.
Yeah, you know what's really fascinating about these two cases is they both involve individuals making reckless choices,
Yeah.
with some really big consequences, but their reactions are just wildly different.
Yeah.
One seems almost clueless about how serious the situation is, while the other is very, very aware of public image and deflecting blame.
Yeah. It's a real head scratcher. We've got a drunk driving case that ended tragically, and a prison guard caught in let's just say a compromising position.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's start with the drunk driving case. Stephanie Melgoza was a college student at the time, and she caused the deaths of two pedestrians, Paul Prent and Andrea Rosovitz.
Okay, so let's unpack this. What makes this case stand out from just your typical DUI tragedy?
Well, the victims, Paul and Andrea, were actually at the same bar as Stephanie. That night, they chose to walk home to avoid driving after having a few drinks.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Exactly. Responsible choice. Obviously. Stephanie, on the other hand, had a blood alcohol level almost 3 times the legal limit. And what's truly unsettling is her behavior at the scene, and even afterward. Police reports describe a pretty gruesome scene. Andrea's leg was severed and found attached to Stephanie's car. Paul was missing a leg, both with severe trauma, but Stephanie just seemed detached, almost like nonchalant about the whole thing.
Wow, it's hard to fathom that level of disconnect.
Right, and she insisted she only hit one person. She laughed and smiled during sobriety tests, sang in the police car, and she was even worried about emailing her professor about missing class.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Later on, she talked about joining the DUI club with her coworkers. It's just this bizarre contrast to the tragedy that had just happened.
It's almost as if she was treating the whole thing as an inconvenience.
Yeah, it's incredibly disturbing. This disconnect between her actions and her reaction raises a big question. Was this like a genuine lack of understanding of what she did? Or was this some kind of calculated attempt to downplay the severity of her crime?
Yeah, that's a good question. She did plead guilty in the end and received a 14-year sentence.
Right. But even with the sentence, there are some details that really fueled public outrage. She still received her college diploma while behind bars and then got married and pregnant while out on bail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It really created this perception that she lacked remorse for her actions.
So how do we even begin to assess someone's remorse in a situation like this? And as a society, how do we even grapple with such seemingly callous behavior in the face of such, immense loss?
Those are some really tough questions, and there aren't any easy answers.
Right.
Some people argue that her behavior, especially that initial reaction at the scene, just points to this fundamental lack of understanding the gravity of what she did.
Yeah.
Others suggest it might be a coping mechanism, a way to deal with, just overwhelming guilt and shame.
It's a real moral and ethical puzzle. On one hand, 2 lives are gone because of her choices. On the other hand, she's continuing to make life choices. Marriage starting a family that seemed to clash with the severity of the crime.
Right. It definitely challenges our ideas about justice and accountability and, truly grasping the weight of our actions.
Okay, well, let's shift gears now to a story that takes us inside HMP Wandsworth in London. You might recall this prison was already in the news because of that high-profile escape incident.
Right.
This time it's about Linda Daza Abu, a prison guard who became the center of a viral scandal.
Yeah, what's so captivating about this case is how a single 4-minute video clip just unravels Linda's life, revealing this string of questionable choices and this desperate attempt to control the narrative.
Okay, so let's back up. What exactly happened in this video?
So the video was shot by an inmate's cellmate, and it shows Linda engaging in sexual activity with an inmate, Linton Wyrick.
Okay.
And it's even more disturbing because the footage shows Linton with his hands around Linda's neck while she's still wearing her uniform.
Whoa. Okay, that's a whole other level of disregard for the rules. And I'm guessing this was filmed on one of those illegal phones that keep getting smuggled into prisons.
You got it. So this video really captures so many layers of transgression. You've got ignoring prison rules, the presence of contraband, that really unsettling power dynamic, and then the casual recording of it all, complete with commentary from the cellmate, who seems to be enjoying the spectacle.
And of course, this video goes viral.
Oh yeah, it explodes online, shared everywhere. Linda's identity is quickly revealed, and remember, she was already somewhat known because of her appearance on that reality show about open relationships called The Open House. Great experiment.
Oh, yeah.
And there were even whispers of her having an OnlyFans account.
So she already had a history of pushing boundaries and maybe even seeking attention.
It seems that way, yeah. After the video went viral, Linda tries to flee to Madrid, but she's caught at Heathrow Airport. And this is where her attempts to control the narrative really kick into overdrive.
Yeah, she went on like an Instagram rant, right?
Oh, yeah, in a series of rambling Instagram stories,
Mhm.
she denies making any money from the scandal and criticizes OnlyFans creators who are impersonating her, trying to cash in with, similar prison-themed content.
So it sounds like she's more worried about protecting her brand than facing the consequences of her actions.
That's the impression a lot of people got. Yeah, she goes on to complain about the media twisting the story and claims that she was pressured and coerced into filming the video, which of course contradicts the prosecutor's statement that she was an enthusiastic participant who abused her power.
So she's playing the victim card while simultaneously trying to salvage her reputation. Did anyone from her personal life weigh in on the situation?
Her husband's family, particularly her father-in-law, publicly called her out, calling her an idiot for her actions. Her husband stayed silent, offered no public support.
Wow, it seems like her actions created this domino effect, damaging her reputation and her relationships.
Absolutely. And, the public reactions were all over the place, with some condemning her actions, others questioning the prison's hiring practices, and some disturbingly making light of the whole situation.
Yeah.
And this range of reactions really just highlights how complex this case is.
Yeah, it's like everyone is trying to make sense of how someone, especially someone in a position of authority, could make such reckless choices.
Right. It forces us to ask, was Linda a victim of circumstance, pressured into making bad decisions? Or was she deliberately seeking notoriety, maybe even financial gain, through that alleged OnlyFans account, regardless of the consequences?
Those are really great questions.
Yeah.
I'm curious, were there any details about how the inmates even knew about Linda's personal life, including the alleged OnlyFans account?
Yeah, that part's actually unclear. Linda's defense that she was being blackmailed feels a little weak, especially considering her public appearances on that reality show and the possibility that her alleged OnlyFans account was already public knowledge.
Yeah, it seems like she was playing a risky game, blurring the lines between her personal life and her professional responsibilities.
And that raises a really important question. What are the ethical boundaries for people in positions of power, and how does that desire for notoriety, especially in our social media-obsessed culture, influence the choices that we make, even when they could have really devastating consequences?
Those are some heavy questions to ponder. I'm already feeling like I need a mental break to process all this, but I'm also hooked on what happens next. What about the aftermath of both of these cases? What were the final outcomes, and were there any broader implications?
Hold on to those questions. We'll dive deeper into the aftermath of both cases and explore their broader implications right after this. Even though Stephanie Melgoza received a 14-year sentence, a lot of people felt like justice wasn't fully served. The fact that she still got her college degree while incarcerated sparked a huge debate.
It does feel jarring, like it diminishes the loss felt by the victims' families. And on top of that, she was able to get married and have a child while out on bail awaiting sentencing.
It's a complicated situation, for sure. Some people argued that her getting a degree was a separate issue from her crime, and that denying her the diploma wouldn't bring back the victims. Others felt it sent the wrong message. Like she was benefiting from the system despite her actions, and her getting married and having a child during that time just added fuel to the fire.
Yeah, it's like society struggles with reconciling the different parts of a person, especially when one of those parts caused so much irreversible harm.
Exactly. We want to believe in rehabilitation and second chances, but the victims' families are left with the permanent impact of her actions. It's a really difficult balance.
Linda Daza case brings in that whole world of viral scandals and those blurry lines between attention-seeking and facing the consequences, what ended up happening to her.
Well, Linda pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office, a charge that could actually lead to a life sentence in the UK. However, in most similar cases involving inappropriate relationships between guards and inmates, sentences are typically 3 to 4 years.
Given the extra layers of her case, the viral video, the alleged OnlyFans account trying to flee the country, it seems likely she'd get a harsher sentence.
It's definitely possible the prosecution emphasized her disregard for prison rules and her abuse of power, arguing that her actions not only put her own safety at risk, but also jeopardized the security of the entire prison.
And the fact that Wandsworth Prison had that high-profile escape just a few months before this incident probably didn't help her case.
You're right that escape already put the prison under a microscope, raising questions about staffing security protocols and, just the overall competence of the institution.
So Linda's actions just added to that existing scrutiny. It's interesting how these two cases, though, so different in nature, both expose these vulnerabilities in systems that are supposed to protect and uphold justice.
That's a really sharp observation. Stephanie's case highlights the flaws in a system that allowed her to get her degree and start a family while awaiting sentencing for a crime that took 2 lives. Linda's case exposes the cracks in a prison system that didn't adequately vet her background or enforce its own regulations.
Yeah, both cases leave you feeling unsettled, like justice wasn't completely served.
It's true, they make us confront these uncomfortable truths about human nature, the allure of attention, the complexities of accountability, and the limitations of our justice system.
So what are the takeaways here? We've delved into these two situations where boundaries were crossed, consequences were severe, and reactions ranged from disturbing indifference to calculated defensiveness, it makes you think.
What stands out to me is the role of social media and that hunger for viral fame. In both of these cases, it's like both individuals were, in their own ways, performing for an audience, even in the middle of tragedy and wrongdoing.
Absolutely. This brings up a lot of questions. How much are we all influenced by that desire for attention? And how do we hold people accountable when their actions and their reactions seem so far removed from what we consider normal?
Yeah, those are questions worth pondering. How much does that drive for validation to be seen and acknowledged shape our choices, even if it means making decisions that could have significant consequences? It's a complex aspect of human behavior.
What happened to Linda after her guilty plea, and what lasting effects did these cases have?
Let's explore those final chapters and the broader implications. Stay tuned for the conclusion of our deep dive.
Okay, so let's get some closure on Linda's case. What happened after that guilty plea?
Well, the judge sentenced her to 16 months in prison for misconduct in public office.
16 months.
Yeah. And remember, this was a case where a life sentence was technically possible.
Right, right.
But most similar cases end up with sentences of like 3 to 4 years.
So 16 months is definitely on the lower end, considering all the factors we talked about.
Yeah, it is. And the judge actually acknowledged that the widespread sharing of the video and the public humiliation Linda endured, played a role in the sentencing decision. There was also concern about the impact a longer sentence might have on her young child.
It's an interesting twist, isn't it? The very thing that amplified her story, social media, and that desire for attention might have also played a role in reducing her punishment.
It is kind of a strange paradox. It speaks to the power of the narrative and how public perception can even influence legal outcomes.
Yeah, it also makes you think about the long-term consequences for everyone involved. Stephanie Melgoza, even though she's serving her sentence, will forever carry the weight of her actions, as will the families of Paul Prent and Andrea Rosowitz.
Absolutely. Their loss is just this tragic reminder of the devastating impact of drunk driving. And while Linda Daza Abu serves her time, she'll have to rebuild her life amidst the wreckage of this scandal.
It's a lot to unpack. These stories are messy, they're complicated, and they definitely don't offer any easy answers. So, what are some of the bigger questions these cases raise for you?
For me, it comes down to this. How do we navigate the complexities of human behavior in an age where social media and the pursuit of viral fame can really distort our sense of responsibility? These cases really highlight how those impulses can lead to reckless choices with really far-reaching consequences.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought. It makes you wonder if we're all susceptible to that allure of attention, even if to a lesser degree.
I think it's definitely a question worth pondering.
Okay.
We live in a culture where everyone has a platform, and those lines between public and private, real and performative, are constantly blurring these cases for stark reminders that actions have consequences both for ourselves and for those around us.
And that's where we leave this deep dive. We've unpacked two very different stories that ultimately converge on some similar themes: that desire for attention, the burden of responsibility, and the enduring impact of our choices. It leaves us with a lot to consider about how we navigate these complex forces in our own lives.